There
So I'll start the way we started the last couple of nights and just kind of give an overarching reason as to why we're here. So the main reason we're here is to kind of start to build up a relationship with local people again, and that begins by kind of opening the doors and saying what's going on, and starting that conversation going both ways. Over the week, we've had three different events now. On Monday, we began with an access event in Finsbury Park. We walked around with the local council, kind of just checked out the local area just to get some relevant information that's up to date to start feeding into the council and talking about access in a much bigger way across the borough. In a quick update from that, we have now been invited to speak to the planning department as a result of that meeting and the conversation that we were having ongoing with Living Streets. They've now brought us in to have a discussion around these barriers, as Sandy, that you were talking about previously, the ones that are too close together. So they're reviewing those and they want our input into what kind of barriers would work, but also into street barriers right across the borough and all forms of kind of street planning. So already since Monday, there's been progress on that. Tuesday, we had a meeting around welfare, and we decided to have a stall on the 21st of November in Nag's Head Supermarket at 1 o'clock, and a few other things that we're starting to do, including, and I just had a call from Ash there, making a video, and we've now got some progress on that. So we've got some film people and some editing people who are ready to go with that, and are happy to take part. And that is about informing people what the rights are under PIP, under Universal Credit, under ESA. Just a short 2 or 3 minute video, just kind of lots of bullet points about what your rights are, what you can do, what you can't do in assessments and applications and all of that. And then last night we had a meeting on housing. We had a few people from the local estate, and their drive was to try and get back up one of the neighbourhood forums, which used to be quite active locally, bringing in residents, services, local businesses, local councillors, and everybody really interested in the local area, just as a kind of community space where people can talk about whatever issue it is, whether it's crime or accessibility or whatever those things are that are going on locally. Just having a space where everyone can kind of come together, and then a bigger open meeting as well, to talk about some of the things, particularly on the estate, that are causing problems for people. So we've already got some agreement in principle from a couple of the local councillors to come along to that. So, you know, tonight is the last meeting of 4 this week. And what we'll do is at the end of this meeting, we'll put everybody um, into one big group in those smaller groups, and update everybody, and then give everybody access to the bigger group if they want to then, so we can start planning those smaller activities and then wider campaigns as a wider group to bring all of those things together, right across the borough. So what we'll do tonight is we'll have a quick go around and say who we are first. Then we'll open the floor up really just to, for 20 minutes or so, and just listen to what people have to say. Then we'll think about kind of what our response to that is, how we might kind of address those things that are coming up, and then the actual kind of practical stuff of how we carry out those kind of activities. Yeah, and then hopefully by about 8:15 we should be out. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, if at any point you want to turn off the light, sure, just let us know. We'll turn it off. We can go back to it. So for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to shut up and you're going to talk, which will be enough. So yeah, what's going on? Essentially.
You want us to all
Yeah,
introduce initially?
Do you know,
What brought people here this evening?
can I just say, I'll say, in the last few weeks, there have been 2 access issues I've noticed. One is a bit older, which is on the corner of Chapel Market and Liverpool Street, Liverpool Road. They changed the access of they changed the shop front on what used to be the jewellers. So
Yeah.
that it was level access,
And now it's a step.
and now it's a step.
Yeah.
And I noticed that there's a restaurant on the same side as the town hall,
Yeah.
which has always been level access, and now it has a step.
Yeah.
Mind you, it's going to be a raw food vegan place, so don't make much odds to me.
You won't be getting much of my custom either, to be fair.
But
Yeah.
it does seem to me to be a bit
Rolling backwards.
outrageous that they can, and I also understand that the pub at Highbury Corner, which used to have a slow ramp down to it, now has a ramp where it's,
Which one is that?
you know, it's
Corner.
on, no.
It used to be the hen and chicken the other side
Oh,
of the garden.
Yeah, no, not the hen and chickens, on the other side of the road. It's sort of down, lower.
What was things?
Corner of Highbury Corner, it has a garden at the front, the only
Yeah.
pub with a garden at the front, and it has a big ramp going. It's a brewery pub now. They brew their own beer
Yeah.
there. Or whatever.
And it just seems to me we're going the wrong way somehow.
I think Will Pike did his thing on that specific bar. Yeah.
Reversing.
But
The access.
it just seems, I mean, and the council, as a planning authority, ought to.
But this is, I was telling Garrett that a guy stopped me on the way to work a few weeks ago, literally in the middle of the road. And he was from Ribbon Street, and it was when we were planning the access thing on Monday, and he brought up the thing that you'd mentioned previously about the street barriers, but also that some of the new developments in Packington didn't have drop curves or table curves, and that we seem to be going backwards in that a lot of the repairs that were done and a lot of the new developments weren't incorporating the accessibility standards that previously were.
Yeah.
So I do think that is something, and we started a conversation then about that, and from Monday's kind of meeting as well.
Yeah.
The planning department are going to get us in now. So I think these are things that we should, like, because it's popping up in a few different areas.
Because the thing about the barriers,
Yeah,
which are there to stop the bicycles,
yeah,
it doesn't stop the bicycles. It just means it's almost impossible for people on scooters.
They're there to stop motorcycles.
Yes, but it doesn't.
No.
It just stops scooters, which have got longer wheelbase than wheelchairs.
and they're really awkward to navigate as well when they're badly installed. And there's a really bad one on the side of this building.
Yeah.
There's two on the same side, and it's like,
I don't know which.
yeah, it's like, how bad do you have to be to put two on the same side?
It's like at the Woods, Highgate Woods. There's one which I could just about get out of.
Yeah.
Right. But the bicycle that came in took about a quarter of the time of getting in than me, and it's simply supposed to be there for bicycles.
And I think it is something that we can build something really strong on, the access stuff, because it is something that's relevant to most people, and it is widespread across the borough now, particularly as well. They're putting in so much investment. They've done Archway, they're doing Highbury roundabout, they're going down to Old Street roundabout. So they're putting in huge amounts of investment right across the borough. And there's a lot of these new housing developments as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if they don't get it right now, it's going to take years to kind of iron out all of these problems. So now is the time while they're doing it, and in the midst of doing it, kind of striking while the iron's hot. So I do think we need to push at the access stuff 100%. You know, like there's just too many little things to be let go now in so many different areas that it is kind of backsliding right across the whole lot, you know.
I saw a programme on social prescribing this morning,
Okay,
going back to the discussion
okay, for
on Monday, which was quite interesting because this wasn't a DWP one. It was actually showing they've got a whole social prescribing programme in the Eden Project.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you have to live in Cornwall. but it was about sort of walking routes and all that.
Was it on TV or?
Yeah, some rubbish first thing this morning.
I mean,
Yeah.
even from here to, I wouldn't have been aware of it, but even from here to Highbury Corner, the number of places there isn't a drop curb on either side of the road, even though myself and Jay went from one side to the other in order to try and maximise how many drop curbs there were.
Yeah.
There wasn't on either side complete straight run. And if you were going solo, and you should be independent to do that, power chair or scooter or wheelchair, it wouldn't be possible. You'd actually risk tipping.
And it seems to be part of the course when you come up Upper Street and Holloway now, more and more places seem to be kind of less navigable. There's no doubt that it's not as easy to get around the back streets as it was. even 5
Definitely
years ago.
backsliding on street access,
Yeah.
the ramping on and many more curbs rather than the
I also
monkey.
think there's more obstacles. So, street furniture in places that there shouldn't be.
Yeah. Gets in your way, yeah.
Tree pits, which are death traps because they're not very easy to see and they're real trip hazards as well. And which is mostly a problem for walking people who have visual impairments because there's nothing to show you that the tree pit is deep and they don't do anything about it.
And the pavement should be a bit wider as well.
They're never
When
going
they go towards Highbury Station, if they're walking on the left-hand side going up, the pavement is really narrow.
Yeah.
There's a little corner where the fence comes out as well.
I mean,
Yeah.
have you been
The
there on
hedge.
the road? Have you been up there on the road, Sean?
Yeah.
You've been up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. If there was someone coming on the other side, someone had a pram, it's difficult. I gotta go on the road, or she's gotta go on the road.
I wonder, one thing that annoys me more and more often at the moment is the amount of scaffolding that goes up on the street with complete disregard to everyone passing by. Like just where you were mentioning there, as I was walking up today, they had all the scaffolding out onto the pavement with the truck parked up on the pavement, and then all the metal parts scattered all over the pavement. I took a photo. Obviously, they shouted abuse down at me. But they'd obviously left by the time you guys had come down.
And if you say something,
They shout abuse at you.
yeah, shout do something.
Yes.
But I've noticed that they seem to take, especially along this road, they just park their truck wherever they want. They start putting up the scaffolding in the middle of the pavement with prams coming past. And there's nothing you can, I've tried a couple of times, you can only get them if they stay in the same place for 4 hours and the environmental health turn up, but they're usually gone by then. And they're
So
usually
you
not
wouldn't want to
throwing
cross the road, would you? That's why they park on the pavement.
Yeah, but there must be, because it's happening more and more, just I guess it's the time of year for people to do
And
repairs.
less wardens, traffic wardens and stuff like that as well.
It's
So if you
lethal.
say something,
Yeah.
It's lethal if you're having seizures and things like that. You pull down holes when they're doing good things or walk
That's
into
it,
the
like a wheelchair
areas.
could turn over or
So,
even up a trip over.
Yeah,
It's
but they
definitely-
just don't seem to put barriers or warning signs or any of those things just don't seem to be necessary anymore when people are working on the streets, which seems unusual to me.
The other day I came across an amazing one. It's a thick pipe. So what they did was they put one of those yellow boards on it so that you could seesaw. Because it was just in the middle, so it was like
Yeah.
And I was saying, what do you think that's doing?
Wow.
And up and over, and if you squash the pipe or smash the pipe.
No, it's not that. It's that because they put like the big yellow board on it.
Yeah.
You go up and then you'd have to sort of tip down. It was completely.
It's horrible. It's like a built-in ramp directly like a two-sided ramp that goes straight over.
No two-sided.
Oh,
It was a square
Okay.
metal thing.
And then you just dropped off the edge.
Well,
Yeah,
I ignored it
yeah,
because it was ridiculous putting it there.
yeah.
Um,
So what do we do about that then? Because the streets are becoming like a company came around during the summer and put 4 benches onto the street around the borough. Yeah, and the council tried to have them removed and lost the case, and only one of them was be able to remove.
no, other way round.
Was
The
it?
council put those benches up without planning permission,
Okay.
heralded by Claudia Webb, who's the executive member for the environment, and then they had to have 3 removed because
Okay.
they didn't have planning permission.
Okay.
That-
So
Because there were ones where you could donate money.
yeah, there's free Wi-Fi on them as well and data capture and all of that. The streets are like a little bit
Yeah.
a bit wilder than they were in terms of kind of being, dependable of kind of what you could expect, like, but the it seems to be a free for all, particularly with working on the streets, with the amount of kind of street workers, promoters, joggers, who can kind of put stuff out there, the new bike stuff now. Previously, they would have to have infrastructure and payment and parking bays. Now,
Oh no, they're just chucking
now
on
they
the
just
floor.
throw them there. So one day it might be a bike park, the next day it might not be. So it is kind of
The other thing I find a real problem on the pavement is those green machines, the cleaning machines, because the amount of fumes that they put out behind them with my asthma, I actually find them really hard to, because it must be the level that the fumes come out. Because cars are on quite low ground, but these are much higher.
I also have a big issue that I only ever see them in the engine. Like I never see them in Archway or Cali.
No,
or
they
Finsbury.
only clean the bit that's got.
No, Holloway Road.
Do you see them on Holloway?
Absolutely, because they're the ones that, when they fill up the tree pits with grit, so you don't fall down them, then what comes afterwards is that machine which then sweeps up all the grit out of the tree pit.
Okay.
No, I see them quite a lot.
I'm sure I've seen a relatively new kind of stuff that goes into the tree pits now, which is kind of semi-permeable on top.
Yes, it is.
Like a bit crispy on top, but softer.
But they only do it on Upper Street.
Yeah, they're the best ones there.
Yes.
It's that stuff they put on playgrounds.
Yes.
I did actually ask whether it was possible to replace the grit with the semi-permeable stuff, because that gets rid of all the trip hazards.
Yeah.
And it also it means you could still, the trees still get water.
Yeah.
So are we only talking about access?
No. What did you want to talk about?
When I came in last week,
Yeah.
about that issue I had last week with the police.
Yeah.
I mean, like, did the police ever come here, like the police commissioner, and maybe I could talk to him about my issues, or anyone else who've got similar issues like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's hate crime week this week.
Is it?
Yeah. And the police have put out, no, not the police, somebody or other has put out a bunch of hard-hitting videos, right, about hate crime. And I do think the level of, no, it's not the level of reporting that's the problem with, it's the level of people taking note of it. So mostly in terms of disability hate crime.
Yeah.
It's not taken as a hate. I mean,
Serious.
it's not tipped as a hate crime, and quite often it's dealt with the antisocial behavioural bit. If you're being harassed as a disabled person,
Yeah.
and that means that it's never recognised as a hate crime, which is wrong.
Yeah.
And I do think that, I mean, I've felt for a long time that there isn't really any support for disabled people.
I agree with that as well.
I mean, down the bottom of this road is something called Gallup that works to support gay and lesbian and transgender people who've been attacked because of because of who they are, and there is nothing equivalent for disabled people in London.
Yeah.
And that's why it's, if you see the monthly figures of prosecutions, you're talking about 2, 3, 4 prosecutions, coming to court a month if you're lucky. And you just think how many people you know who've been abused because they're disabled one way or another.
Yeah.
To answer your question, we don't have someone coming in on a regular basis. However, we do have to kind of, the means to be able to contact people and get people in excuse me, if that's what you want to. And I think it might be useful if we kind of tied that in with, because a couple of issues came up last night that would also kind of tie in with that. If we looked at maybe in the open meeting and getting local community police along, there are a couple of other opportunities. So there's the Islington Safer Neighbourhoods Board.
But would it be like the community police, or would it be like a police commissioner?
So at the Safer Neighbourhoods Board, it is the borough commander or one of his assistants. Yeah. So at the council meeting, at the council offices, town hall. So that's usually the borough commander, who is, I think, a chief superintendent, or one of his assistants, usually have two. So that will be at that level. The meeting that we will be looking to kind of hold here, we would begin to look at the local community police if there's any left. And I think 4 went to Islington over the last couple of years. But we would look to whoever covers this patch and try and get them in. Now there certainly was a community liaison team within Toad Street, whose remit was hate crime. That was part of their job. So I can check in and see if there's anything left of that. I really don't know. But certainly we could do that. There's also the hate crime network, which meets quite regularly as well, and is always looking to kind of.
Are you a member of that?
We are a member of that, yeah. So I can send you out when that meets again, and they're always.
Yeah, because in my situation, I was innocent. I was the one that called the police.
Yeah.
And I've been living there 13 years. And when the police came, they wasn't listening to me. They wouldn't give me a chance to listen to me. And I tried to explain to them, this is an ongoing thing, but they didn't want to listen. They were talking over me, and they were, standing right in front of me, pointing at me, and they won't give me a chance to speak. And they spoke to my neighbour, and they came back, and they said, "You're making it up. You're making it up."
And did you have any support from the council, from the housing office, from the housing officer, or anything like that?
No, they're aware of the antisocial behaviour.
Yeah.
And I called the police a couple about last year sometime on my neighbour, and the police came out and they spoke to him because he raised his fist at me.
Yeah.
He raised his fist at me, and the police spoke to him last year on Christmas Day. Then he backed off for about a year or so. He backed off, and recently, 3 weeks ago, when I came in here 2 weeks ago, and he's extended his dog lead. He was told to have his dog on the lead. I mean, that's fine, he had it on the lead, but now he extended it. And the dog came up to me, and he said that my dog's on the lead. So I just totally ignored him. I thought, I'll ring the 101 up. Not 999, the 101 up. And when they came the next day, proper policemen came, and they know it was a 101 call, but they came up to me and they were they was wondering what I called the police for. And they were saying that, no crime has been committed. And they said, do you try to speak to him? Do you try to be friends with him? My response was to them, I did try to speak to him in the past. I tried to make friends with him. I gave him a Christmas card to be civil, and then they were talking over me again, and they won't give me a chance to explain to them the whole situation.
So what could you have done with in the two scenarios? Just in the first instance, when the dispute is ongoing, and then kind of when the incident happened with the police, then what were the two things that you could have done with? If you had a magic wand and there was something you really needed in the room or at that time, what would it be first with the dispute? Kind of what could you have done with? Would it be more information? Would it be an organisation to help you? Would it be someone to come out and mediate? Like, what are the things that you could have done with at that time?
Well, at that time, when the police just came, I couldn't believe them anything. Yeah, because they were just me there. They were there. They were just there.
But it seems to me that if you just did a 101 call, then it wasn't an emergency. They didn't rush out the building. They could have actually looked at other incidents and it just seems to me that they didn't do the preparation work. They should have known.
If it's a 101 call, it's not like emergency someone's dying.
No, but so they could have looked at the history and then they would have come round and would have spoken to you differently.
But the neighbour say, all they did is spoke to my neighbour.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. If they had known there were issues last year, they wouldn't then check with the neighbour and say, oh well, you made the call, but we're checking with him.
I mean, did you get given a contact who was dealing with it in the first instance last year?
Yeah,
and a case reference number?
I tried to tell them about all that, but they won't listen. They said we got more emergency things to call to attend to. We haven't got time for this. And besides, the crime hasn't been committed. And they spoke to my neighbour. They spoke to him for about 5-10 minutes. Then they came back. They was knocking on my door. And through one of those metal gates up in front of my door, they're talking to me through there. And they were shouting at me saying that, and neighbours were watching as well. They were saying that, you wasted police time. Next time you call the police, you get a £90 fine. And we could be tending to something. And I said, look, I'm feeling dizzy now. I need to sit down. Because, when you got a brain injury, you feel dizzy. Yeah. But you know how my mobility is. The stairs were literally next to me. And if I slipped down, I could have just fallen down.
Did you follow it up with any other police? Did you call the station or anything like that?
No, I never. And I said, look, could you go now, please? And this is the guy to me. No, don't shut the door. Don't shut the door. I said, I got to sit down. I said, no, don't sit down. Don't sit down. I mean,
I told you not to sit down.
Yeah, then I thought, these can't be normal police officers.
When was this?
This was only 3 weeks ago. I mean, I called the police out before, this is my first time I had a bad experience with the police. Otherwise, I'm really happy when I see the police on the streets. When I come back late from my theatre or sometimes I go to the opera hall, when I come back late, I thought, yeah, that's good, that's policeman. I'm secured. I'm not fighting nobody. Police is there. But they frightened me, I tell you, they frightened me. I didn't know who to speak to. I didn't even tell my kids about this. I just told them, mate of mine. And I came back to her. And, it was a horrible experience.
Yeah. So what do you think you need now from the police to start off with? I
want to at least tell the police, they shouldn't treat me like that. Whether they give me an apology or not, I just want the police to know. That's why I want the police to come here and explain it to them this way.
So we can do that. We can set that up.
Yeah. Maybe there's other cases like this in London or Islington.
Say that again?
Maybe there's there must be other cases.
I would be surprised if there wasn't, similar experiences.
I also don't think telling a disabled person that they'll get a £90 fine.
Yeah. I mean, that's unusual. I mean,
it's not acceptable.
The police officers, when they were speaking, I couldn't even understand what they were saying. They had an accent.
Well, telling you can't sit down is kind of page one of.
No way.
And you know that bulletproof jacket what they wear? He had his hand on the jacket, he's coming right to my face, and he was doing this to me, and he thought, like, if he touches me, I'll nick him straight away, like, but I knew it straight away, they're not proper police officers, like, I knew it straight away, and
So maybe what we should be doing is finding out.
I haven't got a police record at all, the only time,
Were these community police?
they were normal
So
police
they were-
officers.
So they're not like volunteer cadet?
No,
Community police.
because community police been around before. They know my ongoing issue with my neighbours. Got a few of the neighbours doing this to me for years. Like, they know about this, and the council knows about this as well.
The council offers you any kind of mediation or intervention or anything?
Well, they
like
offer
that?
me mediation to talk to my neighbour next
Yeah,
door.
And how did that go?
But I refused it. I refused
Okay.
it. I thought I don't want to talk to him.
Okay, is that something you'd be willing to do to resolve it rather than kind of talk to him? Is it something that you would maybe have a look at and see if there's a way of, if not solving the issue, then of drawing a line under it and kind of saying, well, we both agree to kind of go our separate ways and not to kind of, because it might be a simple step that we can take to kind of bring it to an end if the council are kind of willing, and they have.
Because what they do is they write letters out to,
Yeah.
to the neighbours, and what the neighbours do is like they back off for a year, or a year and a half, and they start again. Like last year, Christmas Day, October, there was an issue with his wife. What happened was I was coming down the stairs. She was waiting with her dogs, and I was coming down the stairs, and obviously she knew the lift was coming down because she could hear it, the noise of the lift coming down, someone's coming down. And what she did, she barged into the lift with the dogs, and she knew I was coming down. She knew I was coming down because up on the top they could see that someone's gone down the lift, and she knew I was there. And it kept on continuously happening.
Yeah.
But when the letters went around, then it stopped.
Okay.
Down Christmas Day. So
I don't mean to interfere or whatever, it sounds like obviously you need some support to be able to talk about it more, and then hopefully you can help with some idea rather than.
Yeah.
Are you allowed dogs on your estate?
Is there dogs on the stage?
Are you allowed dogs on your estate?
I think, to be quite honest, I don't hate the dogs. I don't hate the dogs, but they use a dog as a weapon. Like those dogs are unaware what they're doing, like they're really hyperactive, like, and they come up to me, and as I leave my flat, there's like a steep sort of way, when I walk down. I can't balance properly when the dogs get my way, and they had them off the lead first, and then they put them on the lead, and recently they extended the lead.
So I would say there's something positive to work with if the council are willing to take action in writing to them, and then they're taking action and responding and quieting down once the letters come. So I would say there's something in, once things begin, then getting some response from the council very quickly to shut it back down again. Because I think, from what you're saying, things go quiet for a year and a half, and then kind of build up again. So what you want is the first time something happens after a year and a half, straight away, then the council
Slam
comes.
it down.
So, rather than waiting for 6 months and building and build until the council take action, actually kind of saying the second something happens, getting the council to intervene at that point. But there are kind of protocols in place, and there are processes and policies in place which, when people are experiencing what you're experiencing, then you can go to your neighbourhood office and you can go to your housing officer and you can say, look, I really want some support around this. And there are things like mediation.
But when someone goes with you, when someone goes with you, they listen.
Yeah.
I mean, in the past, like when Jane was there, I had a few issues, and she went with me. And if you got a professional, like from an organisation with you, then they listen.
Yeah.
But if you go by yourself, they try to like get rid of you. Say, okay, all right then. Or if you had your son with you or your daughter with you, they say, all right. But if someone says, I'm from Disability Action, or I'm from an organisation, Central London, or whatever. Then they think, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Hopefully they
Then they
understand the
listen.
services they're offering in those places, more peer support.
Okay. I'm just going to jump in 1 second. What's your name, bud?
And it's Chris Kenyon.
Chris.
We met, and I emailed you this afternoon.
Yes, this is Chris from Living Streets.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Sophie, Becca, Malcolm, Sandy, and Gareth. Okay. Okay, so we can do a few things. I think it might be useful to get local community police.
I mean, the policeman, like my neighbour was telling me, if I shut the door, one of the policemen was laughing. He thought it was a joke. And, you know, they weren't proper. Honestly, I've been stopped by the police in the 80s, the 90s. Never a policeman spoke to me like that.
I think the problem is that
It was the communication.
it's almost given permission to your neighbour to behave badly, because if the police are behaving badly, well, so can he.
Yeah, that's it. The police sort of give him like a go ahead. You could have a go at him. He's not going to call us. He's afraid of us because of the £90 fine. You might get arrested. So you could go ahead now. You could like torture him if you want.
So there's a couple of things I think what we should be doing now is, number one, getting on to the hate crime network locally, the hate crime forum, and kind of bringing this up, because the police play a big part in that, and this is part of their everyday role. So they should be responding to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So also to make sure it doesn't happen again, because one officer, one incident, you know, it could be the end of it, but it's very unlikely to be isolated at just that officer and just that incident. I would imagine there are under, if not quite as extreme, there's going to be other incidents across the borough where disabled people aren't coming out of that interaction in the way that they should have. And I think we need to kind of start looking at how much that's happening, where people are of it, and then kind of bringing them these kind of cases where they can start to build up a picture and take some kind of action.
But you know, with this whole disability hate crime, can't you take this up to the police commissioner or like the mayor and tell them straight, like, you know, what's going on? Because they concentrate on different things like knife crime and terrorism, but they're not.
No, there is a diamond group.
What's that?
There's some group within the Met that is made up of police and disabled people who look at these things.
Yes, it's only recently been done.
No, it's been there a long time. It's
not the one with Ann Novus and people like that.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
And they look at the general overall policy stuff and about the training needs of police, because
I know, because they haven't got a clue when they speak. They don't know what they're saying. You can't.
Well, they used to buy training, but they don't anymore. They don't.
Yeah.
You know, I've been stopped by the police driving. I mean, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Before I had a stroke, I was driving, and they never ever spoke to me like that before.
Do you think it's useful maybe to kind of approach them as well through Anne? So we do have some contact with Anne, and kind of maybe go right to the horse's mouth, because they do work with right at the top level of Met Police, and say, look, you know, this is something that's coming up, and we need to do something about it. Would you be happy to kind of, you know, for us?
Yeah, because you know, I was frightened after. When I walked towards my flat, I thought, oh, I might see a police car, I might see them in there. They might be watching out for me, or come up to me, or bullying me, or something. You know.
Well, so it's good that someone like Andy or whatever, AI have said they're willing to try and follow that and deal with that.
What is their current guidance to their officers?
Oh, it's pretty good.
Yeah, but if you had that as had a sheet with that on or whatever to actually relay back, or to have the contact email or phone number to report when something that isn't going to their own guidance, then that's a tick against that person.
I just think, I mean, it would be interesting to know whether not the disability aspects were noted on the sheet that they would have produced, because I bet you it sounds like not.
Yeah.
And that's so. You know,
So what was that?
when you report an incident,
Yeah.
what they're supposed to do is there's I've never seen it, right? But there's a thing, and it asks, "Are you a man or a woman? Are you black or white? Was this? Were there?" So, for example, was there a disability hate element that they should be ticking in that, or a race element, or a gender element? And they should actually be doing that for everything. And and that's why, given that this wasn't an emergency call, they should have looked up whether or not there had been incidents in the past. So that when they came,
that's the main issue.
And I think that what it sounds like is they just thought you were some bloke who was over the top, and your nice neighbour was the one who was being wronged.
Yeah, because he's just because he's got a job and he's a teacher, and they must have thought like you're just a layabout, and he's a working man.
Yeah.
So he's just sat down with his dogs and his missus at home, and you're nothing. You live by yourself. And they thought of basically shit on me.
Well, there's another thing as well, right? So when the fire brigade come to your house, you know, the particularly if you're an older person or a disabled person or whatever, they have a kind of assessment checklist, which they kind of, and it's not like a formal kind of do you X, Y, or Z, but it's kind of like how you getting on with care and support, getting shopping in, you know, just simple questions, right? But what that does is it alerts them, and I know Hyder on this as well, aren't they? So it alerts them to kind of any issues, and straight away from that, right, they can refer you to help on your doorstep or DAI or whatever, and you know we can pick it up, or Hyde can pick it up, or whoever it is, And it sounds to me like if they had maybe not that whole thing because it is quite, you know, quite intense, but if they had that kind of template, which they carried out on site and which they had to tick through the same way the fire brigade
on a home visit, it's like a mini risk assessment.
Well,
as to all the
I might have had a pacemaker. I might have a heart condition.
Yeah.
They never looked at that.
No.
But what it does is it changes the mindset of the person that you're in front of, because what they're looking at now is rather than a potential crime, criminal, whatever it is, actually they're looking for ways to support you, and it changes the power dynamic in the conversation that you are having. And that's the main thing that assessment does. Is it kind of, you know, so rather than a fire brigade going in looking for fire victims, they're also looking for people that they can provide extra levels of support to as well. And it's the same thing with the police. So rather than going in looking for a lawbreaker every time, that actually in some cases, and going through this quick 6 questions or whatever it might be, will identify whether or not this person needs support. And that should have changed the way they spoke to you.
And one more thing, they told me to apologise twice. He said, you apologise to us. I said, I apologise. And the other one said to me, you haven't apologised yet. I said, I apologise again.
Well, what you supposed to be apologising for?
Calling the police out,
And what did you say when you called them?
And when they were talking me through the gate, they were
No, when you phoned up 101, what did you tell them?
I told them I got an issue with my neighbour, and they said, okay, we could come round tomorrow. We'll be in the area tomorrow. We usually got wait a couple of weeks, but I said, okay, come round tomorrow. The police one was fine on the phone, the 101, but it's the ones what came out.
No, but you see, the thing is, what I'm trying to work out is, did you explain what the issue was?
Yeah.
And did you explain that they'd done it before?
Yeah.
And did you explain it was because you were disabled?
Yeah.
Right. So on that basis, they should have had a form that said there have been previous incidents of a nature where you were being discriminated against because you were disabled.
Yeah.
And then they should have taken it from there. But clearly, that information wasn't given to them, and they were too quick to think that your nice neighbour was the one who was being wronged.
Yeah. I'm gonna draw a line into this bit now, and I'll come back to the actions that we kind of talked about at the end, so that we can kind of figure out exactly what which of those things is best. Sophie, Becca, did you want to throw anything in particular into the mix? No.
No, just that you said that there was a hate crime unit down. You said there is a disability hate crime unit down there.
There's a community liaison unit, of which hate crime comes under their kind of banner.
And just that if that was on either the website or in a flyer or something, so people had a direct point of contact.
Yeah.
If issues came up and they had something to grab to or dinged on the fridge, if it was something that was ongoing. Yeah, so that they had a quick.
It would be good to know how many actions were being taken with disability hate crime as an element.
I mean, my caretaker, he usually walks around. I think he came in here a few times, Ken, his caretaker, and he even knows about these issues I've been having with the neighbours. And, you know, he'll say it to you, he even knows about these issues. And he's been here about 7 years, but I've been here 13 years. You know, since in DAI in Upper Street, that's when it started. But I had problems on my mind, you know, my son, family and everything. So I just left it, and it's not getting worse.
Is there a way of kind of maybe doing this both ways then? So one, kind of giving out the information about the community liaison team, the hate crime network, and reporting kind of processes locally. But also maybe if we're going to have the stall on the 21st, maybe there's a tick box at the bottom of when you sign in to say if you've kind of been experiencing anything like hate crime or anything you feel might be hate crime, tick this and we'll follow back with you later on, so that we can maybe start to build up a clearer kind of picture. Because all it literally just takes is a box at the end of the sign-in sheet just to say, can we contact you back if you have experienced hate crime?
And then we'll get numbers or statistics for how many we're aware of, as opposed to the ones that are so-called, 2.5 people have experienced it in the past year.
Because that's the thing.
When we had some things that set up hate crime, she was in talks. I know I went to something at one of the other local organisations. I don't know what they're doing now.
But maybe cribbing some of the stuff that they pulled together rather than reinventing the wheel. That will shortcut that as well. It's like,
we can definitely have local community support, whatever it is, kind of on this patch. And I think it might be a good way actually, if after the 21st we have a group of people, then we can kind of invite them along as well and say, look, we can get Bob from whatever station it is.
Is there who's the MP for this area? MP.
This side of the road, Emily Thornbury.
Yes. Yeah. Across the road is German.
German,
But this side of the road is Emily.
But I think that the main issue is around local policing practice. It's not about mayor's policies. They've got lovely policies, actually.
I mean, this thing was happened somewhere else. So, like, if we sort of told everyone about it, it'll cover all London, it'll cover all national.
But it's about what the guy in charge, or woman in charge of the area's view is, and how they make sure that it works. And if they're not particularly interested, then there's no focus on it. And you know who does do stuff as well is Adam in Park Street.
Adam from Alfreda's.
Yeah.
So we can check in with Adam and maybe kind of see what they're doing and what they're aware of, and if they are doing anything that we can link into.
I think it's mostly informal, but I did speak to Adam a few years ago.
Wendy's and Adams. So far.
Wendy
has them.
She also did something down, I think, at Inclusion London as well.
Okay.
I heard them at Headway because I went along to a meeting there. and they've been doing quite a lot of more advocacy and things like that. So I'm thinking of them a lot.
I know the BME forum, I'm pretty sure quite recently actually had something around hate crime, so maybe it was in the build up to hate crime week.
Trouble is, the laws are different.
Yeah, but I think I'm just thinking maybe contact the girl there, I can't remember her name, the Greek girl, and just kind of find out if they've got any local contacts and maybe just start to kind of build up a bit better picture and just see if there is other stuff going on that, like you said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, we can just tap into it and kind of open it up, to a bit more. Sophie, did you have anything you wanted to throw in?
Not specifically with the access things, but I just wanted to, I mainly came along because I wanted to find out more about the advocacy and peer support. Advocacy and peer support.
Yeah.
Was the thing where the AO was going with that. It's great to see that you're up and
Yeah.
running and doing that. Or
So there's nothing left in the borough. In terms of advocacy, I think Mind was one of the last few places, wasn't it? And there's nothing at the minute.
Yeah.
I did have a conversation with Carolyn from, is it back up in Hackney? Hackney Choice.
Hackney Choice.
Yeah. And initially the conversation was around, so they do some advocacy, and we have that PIP recording thing. And the initial kind of conversation was around hooking up those two things of getting an advocate to take with you with the PIP recorder to your assessment. Well, there is no advocacy now at all.
The PIP recorder has to stand good for itself, but anything that's a witness bears witness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ash did say last night that they've just got some funding.
Yeah.
Creative opportunities for 30 mentors and peer supporters. So I will speak to Ash and see if there's kind of anything that we can pull that way, so there's free training going, if there's opportunities to kind of get people involved, then we will try to do that. One of the other things that we did talk about the other night was talking to Momentum and to Unite Community about building up a kind of peer support network around assessments. And when people are going through PIP assessments and a buddy system and getting people to go. But if we can get that far, I think with Momentum or Unite, then I think we can kind of look at adding an extra kind of layer and saying, well, not just assessments, but
so the recorder and the buddy.
Yeah.
But that's not advocacy.
No.
Sorry.
No.
Advocacy is actually about having somebody who supports you to say what needs to be said and help you work it out. And it's actually a statutory requirement that the local authorities provide.
Well, they come with you, would they?
No,
but only around certain things. But I don't think we can get quite to advocacy level after that. And what we need is first a bunch of people who are prepared to take this on. And then proper training to take it on.
But I just wanted to make.
No, I'm saying here, I'm saying
a
wider network of people who would be willing to be, to kind of offer that and then getting them trained up. And I think the first part is kind of casting our net.
But the council the council have a contract with somebody to provide advocacy.
Yeah.
I can't remember what their name is now, but it's advocacy for people who've been locked up in a mental health place. That advocacy, but they're also supposed to provide advocacy of a similar level for people who are using council services. So in theory, when you have your assessment, you should have the right to an advocate, but they don't do it.
Well,
you can challenge it. So did you mean particularly around social care, Sophie, or was it
social care, personal care, around health, disability benefits and things. But I think at least the disability benefits are being recognised a bit within CAB and need more specialist services and better support from disability organisations who are more aware of the issues.
Do you still have a direct payment?
I've still got.
So you can ask for advocacy under the Care Act, you can have independent support.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can help you kind of frame that and approach that, but you have every right to have independent support all the way through. When was your last review?
About 3-4 weeks ago.
About 3 or 4 weeks
I'm
ago.
still waiting on the results. I did actually come along here and spoke briefly to the team, Patrick.
Yeah, but the council didn't offer you anything.
They didn't at the time, but then that was partly because I was trying to approach more independent support, and that's what I think is important as well, to be able to get both. And I think that's what was really good about having DAI, and hopefully will be, if you can move things forward in that area.
So there's a woman called Anne Pridmore who works for DPAC, and I actually think she just got onto the disability labour. So she's just got onto the disability labour, but her day job is advocacy. And
Where's she based?
she is based outside London North somewhere and left, maybe Reading. That feels north and left. Is Reading north and left of London?
Geography is my weak point. The geography is my friend.
Okay, well, I think it's somewhere up there. But yeah, just outside the M25 and about kind of number 5 on a dartboard. About that area. Yeah, no, it's kind of up, it's kind of up here somewhere to the left.
Do we still have the drop in here?
So the students are starting next week, and the drop-in will start. So once we do their induction, student placements are starting next week on Wednesday. Once we do their induction, their training, their external training, then the drop-in will start. Yes. Yeah. So we're looking at mid-December by the time, because they're only here 3 days a week, and we got to do. So
have you got many people doing that then?
What's that?
Have you got many people coming in that you've trained?
So we're churning out quite a few numbers now. Now that we have people here to, that we can support them. And when the student placements come, it's for 6 months, so it's always good, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The problem is that they go, by the time you got them trained, inducted, knowledgeable of the local area, used to people's kind of, all of that, 5 months are up in the review, you know what I mean? So, but until we get some money for some more, needs must,
Sorry?
So you could bring in, like, just say Thomas to understand the form or something. My kids were busy. I have to bring it here.
So all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, anything short of advocacy, we can do. So form filling, letters, phone calls, kind of all of those kinds of things.
Something I'm not too sure about.
Yeah. And if you want us to speak to the DWP on your behalf, then we can do that as well. But right up to kind of appeals and debt advice or financial advice or legal advice, can't do those things. But kind of all of the interventions, the first stage kind of interventions, then we can kind of do all of that. So that's not a problem. It's just the specialisms. Then once you go beyond a certain level, then we would signpost you, refer you on to kind of other people around that. Did you have any ideas around kind of how we might approach that? Like,
Even just getting a chance to meet together with a group of other people who do want to do because I think from personal experience and other people I know in horror or whatever, best way forward goes who have known and experienced it personally.
I know Unite Community Union do some training for all.
Sorry, who?
Unite Community Union.
Yeah.
So they do some training for retired workers. Around benefits, advocacy. I don't know if they do appeals, but they certainly do welfare rights and stuff like that as well. Now there used to be a really good around, not so much Islington, but more into Holborn and that kind of area.
Yeah, that's where the Unite building is, right in the corner when you turn down to go to Queen Square.
Well, there was a group there from Camden, I think, that went up kind of up to Harrogate. There was a good kind of branch in that string there. I don't know if they're still going because it used to be Pilgrim. Do you remember Pilgrim?
Yes.
It used to be Pilgrim. So I don't know if she's still working for you now. I think she left. I don't know if she's been replaced or if her role is gone. But I'll find out if she has been replaced. and see if they're still doing it.
Yeah,
And if they are, then we'll try and get them in, you know, and see if we can get some kind of access to what they're doing.
yeah,
But Unite are kind of really, they're bad about, you know, like
Oh, right.
keep at
yeah,
it. Their focus is really, it's great that Unite Community Union is there and it's for non-workers and all of those
Yeah.
things. Their focus is still on representing their workers and collective bargaining and all of
Yeah.
that. So when it comes to Unite Community stuff, you know, unless it's coming from internally, the drive is coming
yeah,
out the way, you know, from inside, then they're usually kind of, somebody else.
yeah.
But does anybody else know of anything else that kind of is going on? And we can start maybe kind of just seeing if we can kind of hook people up or at least kind of start things off. I mean, there's a bit there to start off with,
Yeah.
and if we can at least get people in,
Yeah.
whatever kind of limited terms it's on to begin with, and then kind of start from there
Yeah.
and just see where it takes us, you know. Have the money, have the CAI now. Do you know if any of their money is for doing advocacy, or is it all
What's CAB?
CAB?
Well, I shouldn't think so. They've just got loads of money from the DWP to.
Yeah, is any of that for advocacy, or is it all casework?
It's all to get people back into work.
Might be worth
What's
You know,
what's the
Camden
UK?
and,
Citizens
Hackney
of
now.
What's
Yeah.
the
You know, Camden and Hackney, the disability organisation. What are they doing now in the way? I don't know.
With Camden.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, because again, they had very strong advocacy.
All I've seen is tweets.
Sorry?
All I've seen from them is tweets. I
Yeah.
haven't actually seen anything else, and it's just been tweets around other disability stuff that's going on. I haven't seen them saying we're doing this. I've just seen them
Yeah,
retweeting other stuff. To be honest, I thought when they closed, I was even surprised to see stuff coming out, like you know, because
Yeah.
I didn't realise they'd become
I
active.
thought they'd reopened, yeah. But I only found that by chance.
I think they were hatcheted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
might be worth asking Iola maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
ask Iola, see what they're doing. If anybody hears anything or finds out anything,
Yeah,
send it through. And we'll circulate it and we'll ask the other groups as well. So there's a couple of other, you know, people on the other groups as well who might know something. So we'll make that as an ask.
yeah.
So in the future, any events come up, you just put my Facebook page.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we have your email address? We do.
I think you are. I'll give it to you.
You're on the membership list, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, today's meeting, I just considered that you see it on Facebook.
You signed in the sign-in sheet there, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Is it on there, yeah?
Did a larger thing go out?
On the sign.
Did a larger thing go
I'll
out, or
put it
was
on
it just
there.
on Facebook?
Oh, no, yeah.
I didn't get anything. Or
Have we got your email address?
We should.
Are you, which one are you using?
I'll put it
Sophie
down.
B,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
that
I'll
the
put
one?
it down.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll add it to the list there anyway, but yes, I didn't see.
I'm sure your
I know
details
that
have been
Julie
piled
Cameron
upon.
and things, because I spoke to
We'll
her,
have
she
your
was the one who
details,
told
sure.
me what's going on.
Yeah.
But, not had anything as well.
Are you still on the Facebook page and that as well?
I'm still on Facebook, but I didn't get to see anything come up. You know, because they're now on there, sometimes they only put
The
people on to.
algorithms now kind of,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah,
Unless
so-
you've interacted with it a lot of times in the
That's
last
it,
month.
exactly.
There
then it
is a
doesn't kind of come
way
up, like, you know?
So,
of getting it so that I can't remember. Shut up, you. There is a way where you can get it that the from certain people's Facebook page always at the top.
Yeah.
I managed. I made a mistake and did it. Somebody who tweets who posts rubbish every day,
Okay.
and I can't now remember how to take it off. But I think I'll ask Gareth tomorrow.
You don't need to talk about Becca like that, but she doesn't post rubbish every
Yeah, I
day.
think you've got it anyway, just in case.
No, she just does pictures.
Yeah,
Pictures and tunes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Chris,
I've stopped talking on it.
Hello.
I'm talking.
did you want to try and?
Icons.
So I met Chris a few weeks ago, and Chris stopped me on the way up here actually, and we were talking about, you were raising some of the issues that we talked about earlier, the drop curves, the kind of lack of drop curves, the backsliding and the kind of, the whole accessibility kind of, standards right across the borough. And, those things, those, street barriers that kind of, work, don't work, so like kind of,
So I'm sorry to have been late to this
No worries.
beginning of your meeting. Did you get were there any conclusions out of that, or?
so I saw an email not long before I saw yours actually from that guy that you
David
mentioned.
Harrison.
Yeah, and he has sent a couple of dates. So I'm back in Monday, so I'll confirm with him. But yeah, that was quite positive actually, and quite good for him as well.
Yeah, so you obviously covered the topic earlier.
Yeah.
I'll just say 2 minutes worth on this.
No worries.
So firstly, thank you for letting me join this evening. My name is Chris Kenyon. I'm a resident in St Peter's Ward, sort of down or by Angel. I used to go to Hyde Road for school as a kid, so
Never
I'm
mind.
pretty local. Brought up in Finsbury Park, so.
But I take it Rose Boyson wasn't your head.
He wasn't, although I did meet him. But, he wasn't. He's a bit before my time.
Yes.
So we had this meeting. I think the topic is sort of fundamentally there is actually good policy on paper, but there's been a complete lack of enforcement, and it's happening both on council control grounds, also on housing association grounds, and the scale of the backsliding to me is quite alarming. I mean, you include, I was struck that one of the roads this has happened on is 4 or 5 meters from the chair of planning's home. Like, this really should be very obvious. And so I think that there are a few levers that we need to push. One is, I think, your letter to the committee. It's also worth noting that Islington is about to republish its transport policy. So the mayor's transport policy was published in April 2018. There is a statutory obligation for each council to respond to that, I think within a year, and they are presently drafting that document. David and I have both seen the walking and the cycling principles that are in there, and I can't divulge what's in them because they're not yet in public consultation. But I think now is the time to make very clear and loudly the point that when we create a built environment, it's totally unacceptable that it rules out mobility for many vulnerable road users. Yeah. And in fact, one of the things we were saying when we met was that when a road environment considers its most vulnerable users, it actually turns out as a better environment for almost everybody. So there is no conflict here. It's just bad enforcement and a lack of awareness.
So how about when people have their cycles, their bikes, they drive on a pavement?
So that's totally unacceptable.
But people still do it, like even adults do it.
Yes.
So I thought, what they're doing.
So
I'm going on the cycle race.
well, that's interesting, and I think this is.
And they can just F off.
I think there's a case to be made for wheelchair users, particularly power chair and scooter users.
Oh, should be on cycle lanes, I think.
Do you know why? Because the surface is much smoother.
Yeah.
And also all those bicycles that come up behind you on the pavement are dangerous.
And you can remove the dangerous wheelchairs from the pedestrians.
I was in Wandsworth and this guy was on a pavement with a bike, and this old guy nearly dragged him off. So what are you doing? I said, you're right.
So I think we need to change the that is not acceptable, but we need to change the discussion.
Okay, sorry.
No. I mean, the point here is we're not in conflict. We agree.
Yeah.
So the question is what we would like to encourage people to move cleanly and quietly and healthily as much as possible around the borough.
Yeah.
Why do people squeeze onto the canal? Why do people squeeze onto pavements? because they're scared, generally, of being on the road. So the good news is when we do roads right, we free up, we get those users. They shouldn't be on the pavement anyway, there's no excuse. But ask most of them why they're on the pavement, unless they're actually actively committing crime, it's because they're scared of the road.
Then they should get off their bikes and
we're not disagreeing. We're not disagreeing. But
if they're too scared
we're not disagreeing. But let's focus on the bigger issue, which is drop curbs and barriers. Like the lack of drop. Packington Estates has been redeveloped. It is hundreds of millions of pounds that have just been spent. And there are no drop curbs. They have removed the drop curbs that were there. So to the idea that we are actively spending money so that wheelchair users, mobility scooter users, frankly, people just with kids and prams have less access is against, frankly, both TfL and council policy, and we need to work on that. I was curious how easy, because that's quite a small chair.
It's normal size.
Normal sized, interesting. And the barriers, for example, down here by River Walk.
Okay, if I take both my foot plates off and go very slowly, I can get round. Unlike the bikes, it's supposed to stop, who can whiz through.
Yes, I mean, that's my other problem, they just don't work.
That's right.
These barriers don't. But in fact, they inconvenience the very people who should be helped.
But it's the same as...
The perfect example is here, they put them on this walk here. One of our volunteers complained that he couldn't get through. So what they now have is two barriers on the same side of the path. Rather than just removing it, they put both of them on the same side.
So that doesn't do anything.
There is no... So
the level of moronic behaviour here is each one.
So it's the same as on the canal. They were looking at ways to slow bicycles down. And I went there, as did somebody in a small scooter. Every solution did not slow the bicycles down, but did slow both of us down. And yet they'd still put those little sleeping policemen in, even though they make no effect at all on push bikes.
And in fact, the worst part is that they, the fast cyclist on a mountain bike who's very able is the one who's least slowed down, and and the exact type of people we want to encourage to go slowly on bikes, the mum carrying a child, or lots of the other users, they're excluded. So I think we have common purpose here. So the levers I mentioned, the transport policy is being published very shortly. We'd like to see it be really strong on accessibility for everybody, and we think that mobility scooters should be specifically called out there. So we'll be pushing for that, and we'd like your support on it.
Called out in what way?
That they need to be taken into consideration when in design standards for the built environment.
Especially if you look at people in mobility scooters, they tend to be the eldest, the least mentally alert, and those with the worst eyesight and can go twice as fast as I can.
So I think you should input into that document. So, and because once it gets published, it's a 10-year strategy. So, and it's being written right now, gets published in the next few months. So the timing, I think you should be involved in that. Secondly, separately from the transport policy, I think we should do a photo. I think we should do get a local paper article about Packington. Not to attack Packington, but it's just a great example of a lot of public money being spent with lots of supervision and being done really badly. I think we have to sort of it needs to be a little bit embarrassing for the council, because this has been raised several times over the last 2 years and they haven't moved on it. And I think it's disgrace. I think it's disgraceful, and a bit of political pressure is required. The third thing to make you aware of is there is a working group being set up, which I've sent you the details by a guy called Richard Ambler, who's an officer in the planning department, specifically looking generally at barriers. He gets it. He is trying to make sure that at the end of a set of 3 meetings, the working group comes to the conclusion, which you've already got to, which is almost any barrier that would make a difference is going to disadvantage the most vulnerable, and therefore just doesn't meet the basic social justice or spatial justice angle here. So I think that's also a group that you've got some spare time.
Do you know, on Laycott Street, which has got a school, got a barrier in the middle of the road. It also has two very narrow places for bicycles, push bikes to go. It also has a sign that says no motorbikes.
And it is where the Islington Central Medical
Yeah.
Centre is. So everyone has got an
What
insurance.
the motorbikes do, having been told if they drive through that, they may or may not, usually may not get a fine. They go up onto the pavement and drive round it, which I see, or they get off and push it through.
Yeah, you're pushing through. I'm not so.
No, that actually.
I met a resident on around Islington who was very supportive of the barriers, and I thought I'll go and understand. And he's got a real problem with moped noise, and he said the problem with them is look at these videos, and he showed me videos of mopeds now mounting the pavement. He said what we really need is the barriers on the pavement too. And I said, so do you see where this gets us? Like in the end.
Yep.
You won't be able to get the pram through. And he said, oh, yes. Well, that's a problem for another day. And I'm like, no, it's a problem for today. So I agree, I'm with you. So the other thing about on the press side is I'm very happy, so I'm from a software background. I'd quite like to develop a map of where we know there's been, if you've got streets like that where you think the intervention isn't working, and is in fact actively a blocker, I'd just like us to create a simple map of them in the borough.
Well, my biggest problem with Laycott Street is that it's got a hearing impaired unit. So that means every single day for about an hour, you've got vehicles parked. And added to that, you've got all the parents who come. And the bloke gives them 20 minutes parking time. So you have an amazing amount of traffic which goes up and then has to turn around and come back either way. And lots of people and in the winter with their vehicles.
They run the engine,
yeah.
Although most heaters don't need it anymore. Are you aware of school streets? Has this come across?
Well, I would love it if the street closed, but the problem is because it's a hearing unit, there are vehicles, large vehicles that take one child to Waltham Forest and one child to Enfield and one child to Barking and Dagenham, right? So you've got very large vehicles with one child, and then you've got all the taxis, because every child who goes there who has an hearing impairment is entitled to free transport. So it's on top of all those people who pick their kids up by car.
Yes, and I don't know the street well, and
it's quite short.
Yes, I'll go. I know where the street is, but I don't. I haven't looked at it with that.
Streets where they close the streets where schools are on during the day.
Yeah. School Street. Well, they just close it for the pick-up and drop-off period. In fact, they don't close the street. What they do is they use a camera. If you don't live on the street and you drive through it, you get the fine.
Okay, like congestion charge.
Yeah, basically, it's slightly to get around the issue you've mentioned, which is sometimes when you putting physical barriers is actually quite expensive to begin with, and then you often create awkward three-point turns. And so here the idea is use cameras for a period of the day, for an hour around pick-up and an hour around drop-off. It turns out that about 25% of all traffic in Islington in the rush hour are parents dropping kids off, despite the fact most of them live within a mile and a half.
But also,
now that's a special school you've got with
the
hearing.
Less than 50% of adults in the borough have access to a car.
Oh, much less. We're under 40%.
Yeah.
Of households have access to a car.
That's what I meant.
Let alone, yes, I mean, we have a privileged small group of folk. Some have had mobility issues, so that's understandable. but there's an awful lot of people flying around in 4x4s who both want parking space reserved everywhere at the lowest possible price and want to be able to drive everywhere in very short distances. And it's stealing the space that we need for a healthier borough. So we've got some choices. Okay, so I don't want to take up too much of your meeting. Those three things are concrete and real and now, the working group, the document, and then doing something around the estate, or just around barriers. I don't want to pick on the Pappington, but I think doing a few examples and putting a little bit of pressure on the planning committee. I'm all for polite emails as well, but I think sometimes you have to.
Are you doing something about, I mean, one thing we saw at Finsbury Park was how short the crossing time
Yes, the living streets, very strong on saying.
And
we've seen a shaving of crossing times across London for over 25 years, and it's totally unacceptable.
I mean, because I used to, when my dad was alive and we walked, he could, never get across the road in the time. And he wasn't the slowest of walkers.
When we timed them at Finsbury Park, they were between 5.5 and 6 seconds to get across that road, which is I think 6 lanes, is it?
Yeah.
At least 4.
Is that the entrance right by the park?
Right at the station.
Above the station, okay. Rock Street across.
Yeah.
So across the main road, across
the
actual entrance to the station and the next
ridiculous. One. Well, and also still haven't won, have you? The one at the end of Liverpool Road, where
so to where it goes to Holloway, where it touches Holloway Road, or which end?
That end, where it should be, where there's a big campaign to get Green Man in, rather, because it's a.
The zebra crossing.
Yeah.
Traffic planning, from my perspective, taking a step back from this, traffic streets with a 20-year-old mindset, which is all about traffic acceleration. And then there is just no systemic understanding of what good policy is. And the good news is we now know what good streets look like. And the good news is it's continual pavements. Forget dipping to the road. If you cross a side street, the pavement should be continuous. There should be no dip. The vehicle you want to make the journey easiest for, the person, is the walker or an elderly person or somebody frail or on a wheelchair. And the person you want to slow down the most is the vehicle exiting at the junction.
No, because if you do that, then how do you teach kids to stop at the pavement?
But if you put a hump at the end of every single road, vehicles are going to slow down by a huge amount, aren't they?
We need to teach children, but the real issue is we need to teach cars to stop for children. Yeah. It's the wrong way around.
Absolutely.
This is the really sad thing in the UK, and I'm guilty of it until I was is that we've got so used to accepting rubbish that we almost think it's the only thing possible. Great cities now do continual pavements where they teach drivers that you are the one who needs to slow down.
But you see, everybody goes on about the Dutch experience, yes, but the trouble is the mindset of the drivers are different, and until you get the drivers not to
the infrastructure is different.
Yeah.
The infrastructure teaches drivers. Dutch drivers are not good when you take them out of the. There are parts of the Netherlands which aren't great on the built environment, and it turns out Dutch drivers, they're better, but they're not great. Infrastructure conditions and informs drivers all the time.
The only shared space I've been is the one in Exhibition Road.
Crap.
And quite often.
Shared space doesn't work.
No, I know.
Not at all.
Okay. Total failure.
Well, it does if you are a bolshy wheelchair driver, because they ain't going to damage their
No, if you're a brave wheelchair driver.
But that doesn't work for either of you then, does it?
No, if you're really confident and bolshy, but that's not what the system should be designed for. It should be designed for the one who doesn't feel bolshy, doesn't feel empowered, isn't willing to fight the fight.
It isn't about that. It's I know that if they knock me over, they damage their car, and they're more worried about damaging their car now about damaging
I was
me.
interested in your map suggestion. You're looking at creating an app that people could actively or just.
I'm a great believer in keeping it simple. Google Maps allows us just to pin, photo, and I was looking today, it allows us to put a very small amount of data behind that. So I'd like to capture the difference between a lack of a drop curb, a physical barrier that the council have actually paid to build in, versus where the council are allowing parking to block where a drop curb should be. Yeah. So I think, so for now, let me have a little think about it in the next couple of days. I think if people just tell us, send us a photo and tell us where it was, we'll add it in. That's the simplest thing.
You can use the Google API to allow people to do that online through a web app. Only because I looked at it.
Okay, yes. Okay, then I'll happily take your advice.
Can we also put in one of the things that really drives me mad is you get to a thing, it's got a drop curb, but one side has a step like that and one side has a step like that. So you're going up like that, which actually sometimes is more dangerous than having, because
I prefer the table crossings anyway, because again, there's slow cars. The table crossings force the car to kind of take action, and you have priority.
They're more expensive to put in because you have to deal with drainage.
Yeah,
but they're the right thing to do.
The other is street crossovers, where, so for example, outside opposite town hall used to be a garage, so it's got a crossover, doesn't go anywhere, so people use it to park because it's not on the road and there's no red lines, and so that then creates a huge barrier to getting past, and there are redundant crossovers all over Islington because they don't take them away.
That's interesting. Okay. Two other, sorry, I don't want to overrun on time. Two other little thoughts to throw out. Are you familiar with a group called Wheels for Wellbeing?
Oh.
Okay.
I know many groups, and that's what I never.
Okay, so this is a group. They represent what they call all ability cycling.
Okay.
So it turns out.
Are they in Regent Park on their bike?
They'll often do. They do events.
Yeah.
They have lots. They do. Well, they do two things. So they. It turns out 5% of all bike users in London, so not cyclists, don't call them that, bike users, are registered disabled. Which is kind of interesting because the overall population is 6.5% ish.
18 in Islington.
Okay. I was
people mobility.
Mobility.
Or 20, depending on whose stats you believe.
Well, I'll go. This was the numbers they'd given me. Anyway, the point they were making out is they had a lot of. Isabel Clements is the one who leads it. She is a hand cyclist, so only has upper body mobility. And her point for her that she makes is that her all ability bicycle for her is her wheelchair. I mean, for her, it's the thing that gives her the most freedom. And that most councillors don't understand that cycling is not just for, a 35-year-old bloke in London. Actually, that there are people using bikes, and for many, the bike is a mobility aid. So they're a group that's worth being aware of. They are going to join this working group on the barriers, so they're worth knowing. And I can put you in contact with Isabel.
We tried to get them, Jane and I, to come to International Day 2 years running, and they didn't come.
Okay.
You sure you don't need pedal power?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I've been looking at the barriers, and are there barriers that work? Because I've seen apparently none of them work. Barriers.
My view on this is it's just
a better solution needs to be come up.
No, if you want to deal with moped crime, deal with moped crime. Yeah. Don't ruin your work.
Yeah, throw those mountains across the road down there.
It's worth knowing that moped crime has dropped 90% in the borough year on year. And that's because they went and rounded up the people they knew that were doing it.
Yeah.
No surprise. They targeted it and had a huge impact.
I mean, there's also pushback.
Yes. And again, if you target that type of crime, it comes down.
And they are the same people, aren't they, all the time?
I suspect. is the case. Wheel for Wellbeing was one thing I wanted to mention, and there was one. It's escaped my mind.
I was just going to mention when I went back the day from here on Monday, it was really useful when one bike came behind us, that they actually had a headlamp that shone in front of us, the sign of a bike.
Yes.
We've spoken about
That,
this before,
and
yeah.
I think that was brilliant. I went, that's brilliant. I knew exactly what was coming behind us. Yeah. And that was so helpful because we were able to make way.
It is a really useful
one.
Yes, I've not been a great fan of all these fancy lights, but those ones I think are great. Even when I'm on a bike, if someone comes up behind, it just gives you situational awareness. I mean, interestingly, going forward, I suspect we're going to need a similar thing for electric cars.
Yeah.
They're moving very quietly.
I think there should be for every shape of vehicle, so you know how much give you have to give, how much space you have to give, and how much time. You know, it gives you an awareness of shifting this speed. If you can.
Well, I do think, though, the obligation to behave is always on the person who's moving fastest.
Yeah,
Which means
weighs a ton.
weighs a ton. So that should be the bike, just needs to slow down and give you a space.
But also, I do think that one of the worst things you notice is, as a wheelchair user, when you're coming down, you're behind someone walking in the same direction as you, and then on the same line, you've got someone walking towards you. They see you, so they kind of move out of the way. The person between you doesn't quite know what's going on. And then you've got this three-way dance where the person in the middle kind of never knows what's going on. So you need
navigation.
Yeah, and this happens quite a lot. So you do need that kind of. I think it'd be great for wheelchair users as well. Actually,
Yeah. Actually, the worst thing is when the person suddenly stops
that is
to go, because you're just behind. They stop and stick their bum up in
But the real argument in here is we should all be going at a speed where if the person in front of us decides to stop, we stop.
Yeah.
There aren't any excuses.
I've only done my children over, nobody else.
It might not be a conscious decision to stop. For some of us, we have to stop at certain times.
The penalty, I think the penalty for a child making a mistake on the road should never be that. And we've decided to say they have to change their behaviour. It's wrong. The obligation to change behaviour should be on those who cause danger, not on those who are vulnerable. We've got to rethink how we think about transport.
Do you think it would be? I mean, the biggest problem is the through traffic.
Yes.
If we got my submachine guns on Highgate Hill would solve this problem. But I do think that's the biggest problem is through traffic. Because
30% of all car journeys in the UK, less than a mile. Less than a mile. Wow. So I don't disagree. We've got that problem too. That type of traffic has to be squeezed onto a very few number of main roads.
Trouble is, one of them's called the A1, isn't it?
The A1. There are things that can be done to reduce traffic. Squeeze it out. If you plant roads, you reap traffic. If you remove roads, traffic goes down. It's the bizarre. It's a simple truth in the network.
I'm going to end this. Everybody's looking. I'm going to quickly sum up in 2 minutes. Loads of stuff around the hate crime forum, the network. We'll contact Hyde locally and the other Adam and Wendy and see if we can bring in those other members of the hate crime group and see if we can get some access and find some other people and start that kind of conversation going.
Yeah.
Advocacy, choice and Hackney, Unite Community, and we will try and build it into the other stuff we're doing with Momentum to try and kind of add an extra layer. And the access stuff we will start tying up from next week and kind of bring your conversation, the stuff we talked about on Monday, bring it all into one big kind of conversation, get everyone in on that.
The other corner of that is, I mean, there's the thing about the streets and the roads and stuff like that. But there is the whole issue about all and design it, but there's the thing about all of the shops and that don't make themselves accessible.
Yeah.
Or I've even found places recently that have got ramps, right, but they don't have a sign outside saying they've got them.
And I think we can piggyback that on kind of, beginning with the streets and saying, let's get this bit right. And then through Liana and the other stuff we're doing there, start to say, well, okay, let's expand this out now and start to demand more, not just from kind of that space.
But also design of pavements
Yeah.
can reduce the problem. So that if you've got if you're going to redo pavements, as they've done in some places, if you put it up that much higher, right, you get rid of the steps to the shops. They did that, where that very expensive music shop is on Holloway Road.
It's probably issues with drainage and other things like that. So
No, because they actually did raise
Yeah.
the level of the pavement, and at the same time, quite a lot of the shops then ramped because the ramp was a lot
Actually,
less.
you're right, because what they do is they intentionally kind of increase the camber to that side of it, and then you don't have to ramp the inside of the building or anything like that. You just bring the outside, like they did here. You bring the outside to the level of the building rather than bring the building up to the level. Yeah. So we will follow that up with the
Like they do on the tubes.
I'd love to catch up with you separately on this. I just remember that final issue. I won't raise it because it's
No,
closed,
yeah.
but it was around cambers. It's exactly the issue.
No, there is an issue about cambers because there was one outside the new municipal.
Yeah, sorry, I happily catch up off that. That's fine.
I have everybody's email. Margaret, I have yours.
I wrote it down.
And Sophia has
Yeah.
yours. Okay, so by this time next week, so the middle of next week, I'll have all of these kind of meetings were up. We'll send everybody out their kind of summary, and then probably an invitation to something like a Google Doc or a Google group where you will have the 4 groups, the 4 smaller groups, and then the overarching group. We can share these documents and stuff like that there and start to plan things on there and kind of build from there. That sounds good?
It's all on Facebook, yeah?
And we will make sure that anything we're doing will be shared on Facebook, but also you will get an email invitation to that group as well. So, both on Facebook and in email.
Yeah.
We'll make sure you get the information.
Yeah. Come on, man, corner.
Yeah. And you're ready now.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm just going to grab